3D Classics. This series was a nice hidden gem. Legend 3D, who has done a number of theatrical conversions for major 3D films, they did something that was pretty rare, even during 3D's heyday, and that was to make 3D conversions of catalog content just for home media. Now, Legend has done mostly colorizations. They have a huge catalog of colorizations, and their niche is to do public domain content, TV shows and movies, etc., that the copyright is lapsed or is not under copyright to begin with. Well, anyway, they made a series of 3 Blu-rays in addition to that, and they called this one 3D Classics. One of them had the 4 public domain Three Stooges shorts, which have been sold and resold by many discount companies because there's no licensing involved. And those shorts are Disorder in the Court with Curly, as well as Malice in the Palace, Sing a Song of Sixpence, and Brideless Groom, which were all with Shemp. They had already colorized these years earlier for DVD release, so they took that colorized master and they converted that to 3D. So how did it turn out? Very nice. Even the opening title logos are a beautiful thing to look at. The multiple layers against the background, especially in color, is just eye candy. Now, of course, this was lower budget than a theatrical conversion, but it was still remarkably good. In the shot, you might notice that it doesn't look like 3D too much, as in not much double image. But what looks to be a soft, out-of-focus background is really in 3D. He is rotoscoped. It is slightly offset, and when you watch it on the big screen, a 3D TV or projector, you'll notice it right away, and it adds real life to it. Now, there at times may be errors like Shemp's baton in this frame, and some frames the rotoscoping was a little off. And in the cases of bird cages in 2 different shorts, they obviously did not have the time to rotoscope between every individual little bar. So in shots like these, it's really one flat layer that's melded to the foreground. And the items that are behind it or in it are basically pulled forward and pasted to that layer. That's what it appears like. But otherwise, it was full of life and very believable, and a lot of other effort was put into it. Like all the layers of the audience in the court chamber, it brought life and a sense of cramped quarters into the scene where Mo and Shemp are inside the telephone booth, the light shining through a hole in the wall, and even little pop-outs here and there like a foot, or Larry spitting out his fingernails, or even setting down a bottle of liquid and it splashes. All that was done accurately and popped out of the screen. So I'm already a big Three Stooges fan. I have virtually everything from their entire run. This, of course, is essential. Three Stooges and 3D is like holy grail for me. Now, next up is the Little Rascals. And I'm not sure which was made first, but the Little Rascals collection is also colorized, but the 3D conversion is decidedly weaker than the Three Stooges. Right off the bat, you can see they didn't even bother to convert the opening logos. And in the opening scene of the first short, you'll see that the background is often just very faintly separated from the rest of the subjects in just like a very simple layer separation. And even some shots that could have been very easy to convert into a more eye-popping experience were barely done, like this one of flying the kite. That could have been a super easy layer separation, but it wasn't. As you can see, the kite is barely behind the screen. But most of the shots that are like portrait shots of individual characters were done fairly well. Still weaker depth mostly, but still done fairly accurately, and it does add life to it. And some other shots that work very nicely in 3D, like the fishbowl magnification and electric shocks. And these shorts on this collection take place over some years of the franchise, and you see Spanky when he was very little and adorable, and plenty of other characters over the years, and other scenes that for obvious reasons work well in 3D. But yeah, these are endearing shorts with real, mostly non-precocious kids for a lot of the series. Not so much toward the end, but for most of the series, the kids were just endearing and didn't act like actors, which was kind of the point when it was first made. And then the third and final entry in the 3D Classics collection was Babes in Toyland. Now, when you look at the packaging, you'll notice that it's called March of the Wooden Soldiers. Now, this film has a questionable copyright status. It was originally called Babes in Toyland, but then a re-release some years later was called March of the Wooden Soldiers, and it was a shortened version of the film, about 6 minutes cut from it. That shortened version failed to have a copyright notice attached, and due to old copyright law at the time, that made it instantly public domain. However, since it was made from copyrighted content from the previous original version of the movie, that doesn't really hold up as making it a public domain work. However, the original copyright holder has never enforced that. So it's kind of like an orphan work, and people asserting it as public domain or making use of it that way have done so at risk, and nobody's really tried to stop them. So Legend 3D did go ahead and make a 3D colorized version and a 3D version of this. And I guess to be safe somewhat, they called it March of the Wooden Soldiers on the packaging. But in the titles of the movie, it is called Babes in Toyland. There is no March of the Wooden Soldiers in the title at all. So again, this is a stronger 3D conversion as far as these go. It's better than the Little Rascals. You get to see the vintage MGM logo converted to 3D, which is nice. And the opening sequence, which has some very interesting angles, was perfect for 3D and was done very nicely as well. Also stronger 3D layers for this one, as you can see from the background blur in this shot as opposed to the front. Now this was made 5 years before The Wizard of Oz, but it has a very similar feel to it. A delightful fantasy vibe to it. Even though it's not a color movie, it's appropriate that it's colorized, because that really fits the feel of the movie to have these bright colors, especially the metallic red of these soldiers that are marching. And coupled with the 3D, of course, it brings a lot of life to the experience. And now this was a Laurel and Hardy vehicle, and of course they are funny in it. Their slow brand of humor, the irritation between them, Hardy looking at the camera in frustration. And of course, since they're the comic relief, they're the straight leads as well. Now, not all of the video quality is consistent. Some appears to be from 16mm film, perhaps. Some appears to be from videotape. Maybe that was the only elements they had for some scenes, like below standard definition videotape worked in. But regardless, this was a perfect candidate, not only for colorization, but also for 3D. And like Wizard of Oz, that was also converted to 3D. So for this fantasy film, that works perfectly. And even some scenes like the gnomes that have the power of invisibility, that was converted well and looked nice in 3D. And even the MPAA notice was converted to 3D. Why not? So yeah, 3D classics. Collect them all. All three. In 3D.